In my family, I was always the forgotten child. I once thought I could live peacefully with that role, until I discovered my parents were willing to sideline the entire extended family, just to make way for my brother. They turned Thanksgiving into a transaction, turning loved ones into expendable costs. But if they see blood relations as just a burden, then who will step up to rebuild a table for those left behind? And when I start, will they even realize what they've lost? I'm Sterling, a former military serviceman. I served in the Army, specializing in logistics and supply chain management, a field where everything demands absolute precision, where emotions must be controlled to make life or death decisions. That experience forged me into a person who always remains calm, analyzing every situation under the highest pressure. I learned to turn chaos into order, to transform problems into solutions. But right now, in my office, a text message from my mother flashing on my phone screen shattered that order. Just 6 cold, curt words. This year, Thanksgiving is just Brody's family, keeping it small. To my parents, I was always overlooked, a name of no importance on the guest list. Despite being trained to face the toughest situations, that text still felt like a slap across the face, touching a part of me that even military discipline couldn't hide. My stomach dropped. No greeting, no signature, just a declaration I was all too familiar with. From a young age, I was different. While Broderick, my brother, 3 years my senior, was the family's golden boy, excelling in sports, later taking over Dad's equipment shop and living a picture-perfect life in their eyes, I was the quiet kid. I'd bury myself in soldering irons and old circuit boards in the garage, finding joy in tinkering, in fixing things. My parents, Meredith and Reginald, never truly understood my world. They preferred what was easy to see, easy to brag about. Brody's such a natural at football. Or, our son knows how to run a business. And me? Forgotten birthdays. Like when I turned 22, my full-ride engineering scholarship to Georgia Tech was brushed aside by Dad. Are you sure you wouldn't rather stick closer to home like Brody? I always ended up at the kids' table during family gatherings, a shadow, an invisible sun. I stared at that text, trying to blink it away, but it stubbornly remained. Then a thought sparked, sharp and cold. It wasn't just about keeping it small. I vaguely remembered Brody once mentioning a special Thanksgiving dinner, inviting important partners and clients from the shop to expand his business. My parents must have seen it as a golden opportunity for Brody's future. They'd rather choose outsiders beneficial to Brody's career than keep the entire extended family, myself included. Profit. Always Brody's profit. A familiar loneliness resurfaced, the feeling of being excluded that had haunted me since childhood. But this time, it wasn't just sadness. It mingled with a cold anger, an energy that propelled me to plan. No questions. No pleading. I was too tired to beg for a seat at a table I wasn't even invited to. I picked up my phone, typed a single word, "Enjoy," and sent it. I didn't ask why. I didn't dwell too long on the excuse of keeping it small. The anger mixed with sadness, and a silent, persistent question echoed in my head, like the lingering hum of a soldering iron. What did I do wrong? But this time, I wouldn't seek answers from them. I would find my own answers, in my own way, because I knew my worth wasn't tied to the approval of Fort Wayne, Indiana. It lay elsewhere. It lay in what I had built, brick by brick, from absolute nothing. After leaving the military, with my meticulously honed experience in logistics and supply chain management from the toughest conditions, I knew I could do more than just fix circuit boards in a garage. I started from scratch, without even a credit line. I slept on an air mattress in a one-room apartment in Street Lewis. Peeling paint, a rattling radiator, no AC. 5 nights a week, I ate canned chili. The other 2, I debated whether I could afford eggs and toast. But I didn't care. I was building something. By day, I ran freight on the side to earn enough to keep my internet on. By night, I wrote code, sketching out an app that could predict supply chain delays for small hospitals. It sounded crazy at the time. Nobody cared until the shelves were empty. But I saw it coming. All it took was one broken link in the chain, and people died waiting for ventilators. I worked 14-hour days, lost track of weekends. I missed birthdays, broke up with a girl who wanted me to be more present, and drank way too much gas station coffee. I failed twice, once because I took on the wrong investor. The second time because we tried to scale too fast, nearly losing everything. But I never, not once, missed payroll for my guys. They stuck with me because they knew I'd bleed before I let them go hungry. It wasn't just a job. We were building a lifeline. Then the pandemic hit. Hospitals started calling fast. Suddenly, everyone needed what we had. Real-time rerouting of medical supply deliveries. We could track a shipment of blood bags from Tennessee and redirect it to a trauma unit in Chicago before the nurses even knew they were running low. We were the back-end heroes. Invisible and essential. Within 2 years, we were handling logistics for 37 hospital systems across 3 states. I didn't sleep. I lived on adrenaline, spreadsheets, and takeout. Then the offer came. A Fortune 100 company wanted to acquire us. At first, I didn't believe it. I thought it was a phishing scam. But the numbers were real. So was the wire transfer. When the ink dried, I had more money in my account than I knew what to do with. Enough to retire 3 times over. Enough to disappear if I wanted to, and I did. I bought a 38-acre ranch outside Asheville, North Carolina, for $5 million. Secluded. Clean air. Room to breathe. I didn't tell a soul. It was just me. And a builder I trusted. No architects with expensive shoes. No developers trying to maximize square footage. Just a blank stretch of land, trees thick as molasses, and the sound of wind. We spent 18 months on it. Timber frame, exposed beams, a stone fireplace big enough to stand in, a great room with glass walls that looked out onto the lake I had dug and stocked with trout. Every window was placed to catch the morning light. The kitchen had custom counters made from black walnut slabs we cut down right there on the property. I hand-picked every piece of it, not for flash, but for peace. People think money changes you. It doesn't. It reveals what you were chasing before you had to count pennies. For me, that was quiet control, something that couldn't be taken, dismissed, or forgotten. No one in my family knew. Not my parents, not Brody, not even my cousins. I wasn't hiding it out of spite. I just didn't owe them the update. This wasn't about finally impressing them. This was about building something they couldn't ignore. And perhaps, if I'm honest, something they couldn't take credit for. That night, after I sent that one-word reply to my mother, I poured a scotch and stared out the window. The Hudson looked black under the sky, just flecks of light from the bridges breaking it up. My phone sat next to me, buzzing every now and then with some email or calendar alert I didn't care about. I opened my contacts and scrolled to Lysander, my cousin on Dad's side. We weren't best friends, but he was solid, level-headed, always honest. I hit call. Lysander picked up on the second ring. "Hey man, what's up? You get invited this year?" I asked. There was a pause. "Nope. Brody's crew only." "That's what your mom said. Immediate family this year. First time in 30 years. We're not going." I leaned back in my chair. "They did it to everyone?" "Yeah," he said. "Even Gran Vespera, our grandmother. She called me today pissed. Nobody else got an invite." My jaw clenched. This wasn't just about me anymore. They'd cut the entire family out like dead weight just to make room for Brody and his dog and pony show. "You want to do something else?" I asked. "I mean, somewhere better." "Where?" "Everything's booked. I've got a place," I said. "Big enough for 30. Lysander went quiet. "You serious?" "Yeah, I said. North Carolina Lodge in the mountains. You get here. I'll take care of the rest. He let out a low whistle. Damn, Sterling. Okay. Let me talk to Bryn, my wife. I bet she'd love that. Within 20 minutes, he texted back. We're in. By the next morning, I had 10 RSVPs. Then came more. 3 cousins said they'd bring their wives and kids. One offered to smoke a turkey. Aunt Cordelia, my aunt, wanted to know if she could bring her famous apple pie, but it was Grand Vesper's call that sealed it. She didn't even say hello. Just tell me when to pack. That hit me harder than I expected, because in all those years of being sidelined, I don't think anyone had ever asked to come to me for a holiday. They just assumed I'd show up and fit into whatever seat was left over. Not this time. I spent the next day mapping out room arrangements, texting cabin rentals nearby, calling in favors. I didn't care what it cost. I wanted them all to be comfortable. I wanted it to feel like a real Thanksgiving, not some sad little exile potluck. Lysander texted again. You sure we're not intruding? I shot back. You're the damn guest of honor. He sent a thumbs up, then added, can't wait to see what you've built. I couldn't either. Because for once, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about finally choosing who I wanted at my table. I flew out to Asheville a week before Thanksgiving, landing just before sunset. The mountains were washed in orange light, and the air smelled like pine and cold dirt. The first thing I did was drive straight to the ranch, windows down, letting it hit me. I'd really pulled this off. Silas, my estate manager, met me at the front steps with a clipboard and a walkie clip to his belt. We're feeding 30, I told him, and I want it done right. Got it, Silas said. We already confirmed the chef. Do you want past hors d'oeuvres or buffet style? Neither, I replied definitively. I want family style, big plates, full table. We went room by room. Each guest bedroom got a deep, clean, fresh linens, baskets with custom touches, bourbon and smoked almonds in Uncle Thaddeus's room, crossword books, and a magnifier lamp in Aunt Cordelia's, toy trucks and dinosaur gummies for the twins. I didn't want anyone showing up and feeling like an afterthought. We hired a local chef with Appalachian roots. She brought her own cast iron pans, said Grace before starting prep, and nearly cried when I showed her my kitchen. By Tuesday, the cabins were booked and stocked, firewood stacked, hot cider on tap. I made sure the great room had enough seating, and checked that the surround sound worked for Grand Vesper's old jazz CDs. Silas looked at me, his eyes showing clear respect. Mr. Sterling, you really put your heart into this. I just nodded. It wasn't just my heart. It was everything I had ever craved. On Thursday morning, they started to roll in. First was Lysander, my cousin, driving a rented SUV with Bryn and their 2 kids. He stepped out, stared at the lodge, and just said, "Holy shit." I grinned. "You made it." Lysander shook his head, still looking up at the beams. "This is yours?" "Yeah, it's mine," I confirmed. After that, it was like a parade. Reese, another cousin, showed up with his new girlfriend. The first time anyone had met her, he walked through the front door, mouth open, and said, "I thought you were still doing IT stuff." I laughed. I was. Now I do this. Uncle Thaddeus, my uncle, gave me a bear hug and whispered, "You always were the dark horse." Aunt Cordelia, my aunt, cried when she saw her room and said, "No one's made me feel this welcome in years." I kept moving, greeting, pouring drinks, answering questions. Every face that came through that door reminded me how long it had been since any of us were treated like we mattered. By 5 p.m., the house was alive. Kids racing down the hallway. Someone strumming a guitar on the back deck. Reese starting a fire pit out by the lake. You could hear laughter through every wall. Then we sat down to eat. The long table filled the great room, candles flickering, bowls passed hand to hand. No kids' table. No toast from Dad. Just all of us. Equal, welcome. Fed. The fireplace popped behind us. The ceiling echoed with clinking glasses and real conversation. I looked down the line and saw 30 people who'd been brushed aside just like I had, and not one of them looked bitter. They looked home. Halfway through dessert, Gran Vespera, my grandmother, leaned over and tugged my sleeve. "Come here, Sterling." I followed her out to the entry hall where it was quiet. She took my hand. "You gave us back Thanksgiving." I opened my mouth, but she kept going. "We needed this more than you know. You could have shut us all out and no one would have blamed you, but you opened your doors instead. That takes guts." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry, just gave my hand a squeeze, then walked back in like nothing happened. I stood there a second, letting that settle, not because I needed the praise, but because it felt like a damn breakthrough. This wasn't Brody's house or my parents'. This wasn't a rented hall or a potluck in a church basement. This was mine. And for the first time in my life, they came to me. The morning after Thanksgiving, I woke up to my phone vibrating nonstop on the nightstand. 6 missed calls from Mom, 3 from Dad, and a text from Brody that just said, "Really classy move." No one said a word all year, and now suddenly they were all blowing up my phone like I'd stolen something. I tossed it on the bed and went downstairs. By then, most of the crew was already up eating breakfast burritos and pouring coffee. Lysander had mapped out a hiking trail by the lake. Aunt Cordelia was setting up a card table for a puzzle. It felt like a Saturday at summer camp. When they left for the hike, I finally grabbed a mug and slipped into the library. Dark wood walls, leather chairs, a big window looking out over the water. I sat down, took a sip, and called Mom. She picked up on the first ring. "Sterling," she snapped, "why didn't you tell us? Everyone's talking about your house, your event. Even the pastor mentioned it in his sermon this morning." I didn't flinch. "You said you were keeping it small, so I made other plans." "That wasn't about you," she said quickly. "We just thought you'd be busy. You're always working. And Brody's family was easier to coordinate. And more importantly, that dinner was to help Brody expand his business with his partners. It was a big opportunity for his future, son. So, you just cut out the rest of the family because of Brody's business interests?" I asked, my voice calm, but with an edge. She exhaled hard like I was being unreasonable. "You're blowing this out of proportion." From the next room, I heard Gran Vespera's chair creak by the fire. Then her voice. "Put them on speaker." "Sterling." I didn't hesitate. Hit the button. "What's this about?" Dad's voice came through. Gran Vespera didn't wait. "Reginald, Meredith, you've ignored this boy his whole life. Acted like he was some quiet problem you didn't know what to do with. Now you're shocked he built something without you. Be grateful he still let the family in." Dead silence. I leaned forward, not saying a word. Gran Vespera kept going. "You ever think maybe if you'd made space for him at your table, you'd be at his now? What's not fair is how he got treated all these years." Mom finally spoke again, her voice lower now. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "Then listen for once, Meredith," Gran Vespera said. "This isn't about a dinner. It's about who you show up for." I let the weight of it hang in the air. They didn't argue. Didn't apologize either. Just sat there probably trying to come up with a way to spin it. I ended the call without another word. I set the phone down, leaned back, and stared out at the lake. And for the first time in years, I felt something shift, like a knot that had been sitting in my chest since I was a kid had finally started to loosen. After I hung up that call, I didn't touch my phone for the rest of the day. I let the cousins hike, let Gran Vespera nap by the fire, let the twins build pillow forts in the hallway. I just let it all breathe. No more noise. No more explaining. That night I cracked a beer and sat on the back deck, feet up on the railing, watching the sky go black behind the ridgeline. Then the texts started. The first one was from Brody. No greeting, no punctuation, just, "Didn't expect that. But I get it." I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to tell him it was too little, too late. The next day, Mom sent one. Can we come visit sometime? Just the two of us. Then Dad sent pictures. Looks nice. Proud of you. No question mark. No follow-up. Just tossed out like a comment on the weather. I didn't answer right away. I let it sit. Some things didn't need instant replies. Some things deserved space. But when Gran Vespera asked if she could stay another few days, I wrote back immediately. You can stay as long as you want. She smiled from her chair near the fireplace. I told Silas to keep her room warm and make sure the fridge stayed stocked with her favorite ginger snaps. Over the next week, messages kept rolling in from cousins. Next year, too? Best Thanksgiving we've had in years. We're in if you are. None of them mentioned Brody. No one asked where my parents were. They didn't need to. This wasn't about who wasn't there anymore. It was about who showed up. Reese called me one night. You know what you did, right? What? I asked. You shifted the whole damn thing. Took the holiday and flipped it. We used to just show up because it was tradition. This actually felt like family. That landed deeper than he probably meant it to. Because all my life I'd been orbiting their table. Showing up out of obligation. Trying to belong in a space that never saw me. Now, I wasn't chasing that seat anymore. I was building something different. Something that looked like me. Felt like me. And the people who got it, who felt it, that was the only crew I needed. After Thanksgiving, and before Christmas, the silence from my parents and Brody no longer weighed on me. What had transpired, coupled with Gran Vespera's call, had untied a knot in my heart, but I knew the road to true healing was long. As Christmas approached, I decided on another move. For the first time in a long time, I invited the old crew back. Just Mom, Dad, Brody, and Penelope, his wife, to my ranch. There was no big guest list like Thanksgiving. No cousins, aunts, or uncles. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I simply wanted to see if they could meet me where I was now. If they could finally see me as the independent adult I had become, not just the computer kid from back then. They showed up a few days before Christmas Eve, all packed into Brody's SUV, looking like they were driving into a whole new world. I met them at the door. Brody stepped out first, just as I knew he would. That look on his face. The same one he used to get when he saw someone else's success. A little skeptical, a little impressed, but mostly distant. You really built all this? Brody asked, looking up at the lodge, then back at me. Every square inch, I said. No pride, no apology. Just fact. Mom and Dad didn't say much at first. Just glanced around like they didn't know where to put their eyes. I watched them, the tension in their shoulders, the way they couldn't quite settle into the space, like they didn't belong, like I didn't belong in their world anymore. We had dinner in the great room. No fancy silverware, just family-style plates, roast beef, mashed potatoes, a few bottles of wine. The conversation started slow, like we were all strangers trying to find common ground, but then it started shifting. We talked. Really talked. No small talk, no weather reports, no Brody talking about his shop. We went deep about business, about resentment, about all the times I'd shown up and still felt like I was invisible. Dinner got real. We talked about old wounds, the times I felt invisible. It wasn't easy, but they listened. Brody didn't say much. He listened, but he'd never been much of a talker. I figured he was just thinking through it all, figuring out where he fit into this new version of me. After dessert, when everyone was standing up to leave, Brody pulled me aside. Didn't say a word at first, just put out his hand. I shook it, and before I could pull away, he said, "You did good, Sterling. Real good." It wasn't much, but it was enough. They left later that evening. Dad shaking my hand, Mom giving me a half hug. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. A small one. That night, I stood by the window in the great room, watching the snowfall. It was thick, swirling in the cold night air, blanketing everything in white. I could hear the faint sound of wind outside and the crackle of the fire behind me. This time I wasn't bitter. I wasn't wishing they'd been different, or that I'd been different, or that things had gone a different way. I was just damn glad I'd finally shown them who I really was. New Year's Eve. I stood on the dock behind the lodge, bourbon in one hand, the other shoved deep in my coat pocket. The wind was sharp off the lake, biting through the layers, but I didn't care. Stars stretched clean over the water, no city lights to wash them out. I just stood there and breathed it in. It didn't feel like the end of a year. It felt like the end of something bigger. I thought about that kid in the garage back in Fort Wayne, the one with burnt fingers from soldering irons, listening to his parents brag about Brody scoring another touchdown. That kid used to stare at blueprints and wonder if any of it would matter, if he'd ever be more than a footnote in someone else's family photo. He didn't know it back then, but he was laying the groundwork. Now I had 38 acres to my name, 2 companies, a family chat that actually included me, a life that looked like mine, not the one I was told to settle for. Cousins were already tossing ideas around in the group thread. Thanksgiving too. Cabin themes. Potluck rotations. It was turning into a thing. A real thing. Gran Vespera calls me once a week now. Not just to check in, sometimes just to talk. She said she sleeps better up here, that the fireplace is her new favorite sound. And then Mom sent me a recipe last week. Corn pudding folded up in a card that said, Merngir konkothe munmuthuzi da. I read it twice, not sure if it was an apology or just a peace offering. Either way, I kept it. Maybe things will get better. Maybe not. They might slide back into old habits next year. They might not come at all. But here's the difference. I'm not waiting for a seat anymore. I built my own damn table, and it's big enough for anyone who ever made me feel seen. That's the rule now. Show up or don't. But the door is open. No more chasing approval. No more hoping someone finally notices. Just me living the life I built on my terms. I raised my glass toward the lake. The wind howled and I smiled into it. Here's to the boy in the garage, I said. You made it.